Obviously, I was a police officer for 17 years in England, in the two largest cities. And I used to do lots and lots of, obviously, investigations. And strange things happened to me in 2009 when I was seeing lots of UFOs. I was having visitations. I was receiving lots of strange messages. And in 2009, it actually caused me to actually leave my career. So there's a lot happening to me. So I wanted to take that. What I now look into the mysteries of the world. I look into the ancient monoliths, the monuments. I look into the religions of the world. And what I actually started to think that they were individual projects. They weren't individual projects when I started researching them. I realized that they were actually all just one thing. They were all talking about the same thing. They were all talking about the same thing by theme and by mathematics. So what I started to do was actually piece together everything and realize that everything was just one message, which is consciousness and enlightenment. So what is consciousness? Well, consciousness is really the perception of what comes through your brain, comes through your mind. And that relies really on the power of the five senses, which is, you know, the normal five senses of human beings. So when we actually reach the sixth sense, we then start looking into the third eye. And the third eye then connects us to the spiritual world beyond the five senses. Now, the third eye is important when you look at the likes of Egypt, the Eye of Horus, and when you start looking at Egyptian hieroglyphs, which are really what they called the Medu Netta, and that really means the language of God. And it was with the power of the narrative of what they called Heka, which is basically the art of speech. So we had the art of speech in the beginning was the word. So we have all of this stuff that is actually appealing to the right brain, and the right brain communicates and deals in symbols like hieroglyphs and the Nazca lines and like crop circles. Now, the Egyptian hieroglyphs are triple layered, and they are triple layered because that really is a transcendental consciousness, and that really takes you to a higher consciousness, which is the fourth state. That really goes beyond the common three, which is waking, dream, and sleep. Now, you acquire this higher consciousness by what is known as a one-pointedness of mind. It is really the essence of mind. And when you concentrate and when you focus, now the mind is important because when you look at the likes of the Great Pyramid is actually a gigantic replica of the human brain, the human mind. And it is a tripartite of consciousness. And by that, I mean, it marks out the three main endocrine system of the brain, which is the thalamus, the pituitary gland, and the pineal gland, which is the endocrine system. Now, this is marked out in the Great Pyramid, and I've put a map overlay of the human head over the Great Pyramid and discovered that where the king's chamber is situated is where the pineal gland is, and where the queen's chamber is situated, you have the pituitary gland. And you also have that little tower-looking thing inside the pyramid, which is in China and Japan, is the Shinto, and it's called the Shinto because that means a pathway to the gods. Now, it is really important to the ancients, and it's a message that they've left, that we need to concentrate the mind and we need to escape the five senses of this reality. If you look at the likes of Easter Island, why can you only see the heads of Easter Island? That is because they are telling you to concentrate on the divine mind. They're telling you not to concentrate on the body of senses, but to concentrate on the sixth sense, which is the divine mind. And that is why you can only see the heads of Easter Island, and that was really a clue. What I also found as well, there's lots and lots of things we could literally talk all night, but I discovered that the actual Bible, that the true Bible, is the Giza plateau. And you have the likes of the Noah's Ark. Noah's Ark is really the Great Pyramid. When you look at the likes of Mary, as in Mother Mary, Mary in Egyptian comes from Mariam, which means the beloved of Amun. Now, Amun is obviously an Egyptian god. And our moon also gives us the word Amen. And all of this consciousness began to expand for me, and I actually came up with a mathematical formula for the speed of reality. Now, when you reach the speed of reality, it becomes a transdimensional travel. What I didn't realize is when I was coming up with this mathematical formula for the speed of reality, it actually corresponded to octaves within the Great Pyramid. So even they were on the same sort of fort as I was with the speed of reality, because the speed of reality, some of the mathematical equations within that matched the octaves within the Great Pyramid. So Giza, for me, was influenced by planet Mars, not by Atlantis. And when you look at the likes of the word Cairo, it means the place or camp of Mars. When you look at the Sidonian city, Mars is really should we say, a midway point for visitors. And you see that the likes of the Sidonian city mathematically marks the exact location of the likes of Stonehenge and the Giza Plateau on Earth. You find that the Giza Plateau and Stonehenge mathematically marks the location of the face on Mars and Sidonian city. So Mars is really a stop-off point for many extraterrestrials that are coming to Earth, and it is really sort of a navigational system. The face on Mars is a mile long because a mile is actually a navigational distance. So we have all of this. And me, when I've looked into how these monuments were created and how the Great Pyramid was created, I found that they were actually created by a super advanced force that was using sound and breath in order to put these monuments together, including the Sidonian city on Mars, which took a 19.5 degree effect, as did the major monuments of Earth. Now, the reason I say that is when sound waves experiments have been conducted at 432 hertz, it takes the form of a tetrahedron, a pyramid. And 432 hertz is used quite widely in the Great Pyramid. Now, when you have the square factor of 432, it equals 144. So then we go into the speed of light in nautical grid mile seconds, which is 144,000. You then start looking at the 144,000 limestones of the Great Pyramid. We can then start looking at the biblical 144,000. It is really an Egyptian principle. Now, when you start looking at the likes of religion, and I've literally put all religions together as one message, whether that's Islam, Christianity, Judaism, Catholicism, Hinduism, I've actually managed to put them all together in order to show what they were actually telling us. And each religion is actually worshipping the same thing under a different name. Now, when you start looking at the likes of Christ, Christos, it was originally Crest or Crestians. In Egypt, the Crest and the Crestians were the teachers of the oracles. In other words, the high priests that used to speak of the sacred knowledge. And they would only speak of this sacred knowledge to the initiates. Now, the initiates, as part of their initiation, were rubbed in oil, which is basically the anointed ones. So the initiates were the anointed ones, and we see the likes of the gigantic Sphinx of Egypt, which is called the Shepeshank, and the Shepeshank means the living image. So in other words, the Sphinx is the living image of Osiris and Christ, because the Sphinx is obviously a solar deity. It has reference to the sun. It has reference to the guardian of the gateway of heaven and the duet, which is hell. And we see that it also marks the birth of the cosmic seed, which is the solar sun. Now, the Bible tells you that the woman appeared clothed in the sun with the moon at her feet. So what does that mean? That means that on the 11th of September, when Virgo comes up via the horizon, Virgo means virgin, and she is clothed with the sun, the solar sun, the Christ, the Virgin, and the Christ. This happens on the 11th of September. So the true birth date of Christ is actually the 11th of September and not the 25th of December. 25th of December was Sol Invictus. It was a Roman cult, and they wanted to amalgamate the Christian belief system with their own sun worship system, and that is why they came up with the 25th of December. So the true birth date of the cosmic Christ, the cosmic seed, is the 11th of September. When you start looking into the likes of the Illuminati means the illuminated ones. What is the most illuminating thing that we see on this planet? It is the sun. So it makes sense that the Pindar, who is the reported head of the Illuminati, is really the sun, the solar sun, the Christ, the metaphorical Christ. Christ himself didn't actually walk the earth, it is a metaphor. I then started looking into other cultures.
Let's just hang on there for a sec, Mike. I just want to quickly jump back. I found, the speed of reality really interesting. Is that, somehow connected to the speed of light as well, or is that much faster than the speed of light?
Now, the speed of light is much faster. The speed of light is really a speed limit for the human body. Mm-hmm. Beyond the speed of light, the atoms, the subatomic particles that keep us together cannot keep together beyond the speed of light. So the only way that a human physical body could go faster than the speed of light would be in what is known as a warp bubble. Now, I've actually experienced a warp bubble. What a warp bubble is where space is contorted at the front of you and it is expanded behind you. So in effect, you are in a protected bubble where regardless of the speed that you are traveling, you are in effect standing still. So that is a real warp bubble, and I experienced that when I had a visitation from an Egyptian pharaoh in 2017. So the speed of reality is not the speed of light. The speed of light is something completely different, but the speed of reality is really a transcendental period where we can actually transcend this reality. And as I say, when I was working out the mathematical formula for it, there was one specific number in there that actually corresponded to the Ra octaves of the Great Pyramid. So it was really interesting. I didn't know when I was working it out that it would actually be connected to the Great Pyramid. So they are different things.
Are the pyramids in Mexico, and are they the same expression as the ones in Egypt and other pyramids around the world, as we see like in China and Southeast Asia?
Every pyramid, every monolith, every character, from the Anunnaki to the Egyptian gods to the religious gods to the gods of South America to the gods of Europe to the gods all over the world, are really talking about, metaphorically talking about, enlightenment and consciousness. And regardless of the name of the god, whether it's Allah, Yahweh, Jehovah, Krishna, Vishnu, they're all basically speaking of the same thing, which is human potential, human enlightenment. And I've managed to connect all of these religions, Judaism to Islam, Islam to Hinduism, Hinduism to Christianity. Just an example of that, you can look at Catholicism at the Vatican. The Vatican comes from Vatica. Tika means third eye. When you look at the main pyramids of Tikal, Tika, third eye. So by theme, we've now just connected Catholicism with the pyramids of the Mayans. So you can see that this is a similar theme throughout the world and also beyond the world. And again, the right brain, many celebrities, many actors, they will cover one of their eyes, which is the left or the right eye of Horus. If they're covering their right eye to expose the left eye, that is telling you that they operate from the right brain. Now, when you look at how the right brain communicates, it communicates through imagery. And that's why we have the likes of hieroglyphs. That's why we have the likes of the Nazca lines. That is why we have the likes of crop circles. And what I've also found by listening to the frequency of diatonic ratios within crop circles, in other words, within the geometric shape of crop circles, there is a language that is hidden within the geometric shape. When I've listened to that, and when I've listened to sounds, artificial sounds coming from the rings of Saturn, they are pitch perfect, they are an exact match. So many of the crop circles that are in England are created by the rings of Saturn, and it is a deliberate message coming from the rings of Saturn. Why is it that the area of Stonehenge sees 99.9% of crop circles each year? Because Stonehenge is a receiver aerial. for these messages.
Is that somehow connected to the matrix moon or the Saturn moon matrix?
It is all connected because the moon, you know, the Anunnaki did not bring the moon. But the moon was found, and the moon has been used, and the moon is a satellite that obviously has an influence on Earth. Now, the ancients depicted such an influence by the likes of the crook and flail of Osiris, which is a 23.5-degree angle. Now, the reason that it is a 23.5-degree angle is because the moon keeps the Earth at a 23.5-degree tilt. So that is what they are telling you in an esoteric way. As a result of that 23.5-degree tilt, we have the 4 seasons, we have oceans that are liquid, we have an inhabitable temperature. So without the moon, as with the sun, there would be no life on Earth. So, but the ancients were telling you that it's a result of this that humanity is stuck in a cycle, and that we have to transcend the cycle in order to escape the death-life cycle on Earth.
Do you think that the moon may be transmitting the frequency that's coming off of Saturn?
I certainly think, yes, I do. I think it certainly in terms of pitch and in terms, these are coming from the rings of Saturn. And even NASA has said, when you look at the hexagram on the North Pole of Saturn, it is a cloud formation. Now, as we know, clouds do not remain static, they move. But this cloud formation remains static in the shape of a hexagram. Now, even NASA have said this is being held together by something. So when you start looking at the rings of Saturn being used to beam sound, which is creating crop circles on Earth, you sometimes have to have a signal booster. And I think the likes of the moon is such a signal booster. But these fabulous patterns do contain messages, and they are a language contained within sound waves.
So from what I understand, the Stonehenge is essentially translating these sound waves that are coming off of Saturn. Am I correct on that?
What Stonehenge is doing is actually a radio receiver. So it's actually picking up the actual sound waves from the Saturnian rings, and it is actually translating that into an image on the crops.
Now,
and also,
sorry, go ahead, Mike.
Now to say, and even the planet Saturn, Kronos, whatever, is associated with harvest and crops. So again, when you start looking at crop circles, which are crops and Saturn's connection, it's all a deeper meaning to just Kronos or just Satan or just Saturn. There is a deeper meaning to these things.
Is there a because we've seen when you know, a few times now on video, when these crop circles appear, there seems to be a orb that's you know, hovering around, and it's the orb that's actually creating the crop circles. Is there any connection between the orb and Stonehenge?
The orb is really, you can actually create orbs by what are known as vacuum domains within the brain. Now, when lots and lots of people get together and they focus their consciousness, and again, it goes back to acquiring our consciousness by a pointedness of mind, concentration of mind. When people gather together and they all focus their mind, they actually create orbs, which are self-radiant balls of light. And these, when you see lots of spiritual gatherings, you can see lots and lots of orbs in the sky around them. These are the result of vacuum domains that create these self-radiant balls of light. Now, what is also interesting about these vacuum domains is that they are miniature wormholes, and they replicate the gigantic wormholes of space. So we have what in our mind, we have the same as what is in the cosmos. So it's almost as above, so below. Within our DNA, within our brain, we also have extra dimensions. So in other words, there is limited space outside of our DNA. So we really are the universe encompassed into an organic vessel.
Now, we understand that, we're beginning to understand in the conscious community that planets and, everything has consciousness. Now, my question about these, crop circles is that if Saturn has consciousness and the Earth has consciousness, might it be that the two planets are trying to communicate with one another?
They do communicate with one another. Everything does. Even when you look at two flowers, two plants, trees, they are communicating through chemical signaling. So they are conscious beings. Now, when you look at the science theory of perceptronium, it means that everything has a consciousness, and everything must have a consciousness, because even when you look at the likes of subatomic particles, photons, other subatomic particles, it has been proven that these subatomic particles can actually decide whether or not they wish to be a wave or a particle. It's under the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. So if subatomic particles can actually decide if they want to be a particle or a wave, then firstly, that demonstrates great consciousness. Secondly, it demonstrates a decision-making process. And thirdly, it makes you realize that they are aware of what they currently are in order to make the decision whether or not they wish to change. And it's called the collapse of the wave function. When you start looking into the collapse of the wave function, you see that physicality is basically collapsed from a wave form. And by observation, it collapses that wave into what we know as physicality. So without observation, it then returns back to a wave. So when you look at the double slit experiment that was done with the photon, when the photon went through the gap, it was acting as a wave. When it come outside of the wave, it would be acted as a particle. But what scientists also realize is that these things behave differently when they are under observation.
Was that you in the background, Mike, or is somebody's mic on?
No, I can hear somebody. It's a female voice. So hopefully it wasn't me.
Okay.
Otherwise, I've changed. I've transformed.
Now, let's quickly talk about if you guys are interested, Mike did some work with Portal to Ascension about a year ago, and he did a fantastic presentation there called the Ancient Code, the Serpent Fire. Mike, can you talk about that for a couple of minutes? Because right now I'm in the process of actually reading that book. I don't know if you can see it, but just a fascinating book, and I'd like to hear a little bit more insight about this book from you.
Yeah, of course. I mean, when I write a book, as soon as I finish the book, lots more of information gets downloaded, and then that book sort of becomes secondary to the one that's coming. But the Ancient Code, Serpent Fire, is really what is the Serpent Fire. When you start looking at the ancient cultures of kundalini and the dormant serpent within at the base of the spine, which is really what Quetzalcoatl is, which is really what Kukulkan is. It is really the serpent at the base of the spine. And that serpent at the base of the spine, which incidentally I've actually seen, is a chemical fire that is pure white. It is a faceless serpent. Now, when it is activated by certain practices, certain rituals that the initiates did, that the high priests did, that the oracles did, it activates this serpent, which then rises up Jacob's ladder, which is the spine, and it activates each of your 7 chakras as it rises. Now, when it rises, if it's unhindered because your chakras are pure, your chakras are open, your chakras are an open door, then it rises to your crown, to your consciousness, and beyond it into the cosmos. If there are any blockages in your chakras, this is why Christ had to cleanse the unclean spirits, which is really the 7 chakras. If it gets hindered in any way, that serpent descends. So in other words, that is Satan, the descending serpent from heaven, which is the higher chakras. So this is really what is the serpent fire. It is really the activation of your inner fire, your inner serpent. Why was Jesus a carpenter? When you look at ancient languages, carpenter comes from the word nanja. Nanja means the serpent of wisdom. And as I say, when you look at the likes of Quetzalcoatl and all these, they are talking about the serpent of wisdom, which is the kundalini at the base of your spine that is risen through certain practices.
We see that in Chinese cultures as well with the dragon.
The dragon is important because the dragon became a later metaphor for the serpent. So when you see a dragon or when you see a serpent, when you see some of the Anunnaki tablets where you see what looks to be a circle, looks like to be some kind of knitting wheel, what that really is, that is telling you of the circuit of the dragon, and that is really the orbit of consciousness. And the consciousness is important because when you start looking at Anubis, which is really the horizontal circle that divides Sirius A and Sirius B. Sirius A is Isis, Sirius B is Nephthys. One is visible, one is invisible. So when you have Anubis, who is the horizontal circle that divides the two, it is really the division of the visible and invisible, the division of light and dark. It is talking about duality. Now, when you look at the likes of Nibiru, that we told has a 3,600 year orbit, well, 3,600 in Sumerian is written as a large circle. It is talking about an ecliptic of consciousness, and that is really what they're talking about. And I heard Billy talking about UFOs doing a 90-degree right angle turn. 90 degrees is extremely important in consciousness. If you get a circle and you put a cross inside, the cross hits the circle every 90 degrees. When you wish to change from one reality or from one grid to another, you do that at 90-degree angles. When the Masons do their 33-degree initiation, called the rising, they rise at 90 degrees. So we really have a lot of 90 degrees in terms of consciousness as well. So that is why you see the likes of UFOs shifting at 90 degrees, because they're changing from one grid to the next. That then fits into Einstein's theory of relativity. When you start looking at points of reference, when you start looking at geometry, when you start looking at the universe being a gigantic grid of navigation.
Now, do you think these UFOs, they're being controlled consciously through the mind of these beings, and that's why they're shifting consciousness as the UFOs and like while it's in play here on Earth?
Some of them are said to be steered by the mind. I think some of them are not. I think, again, when you look at certain humans, some humans have enlightenment, some humans don't. When you look at the technological differences between certain ET races, some of them are younger than others. Some of them have greater technology than others. So some of them are being driven by the mind, some of them are not. When you look at the likes of Roswell, which is probably one of the most famous UFO incidents ever, what I can say is what happened on that day, the location was deliberately chosen. And it was deliberately chosen because it was on the 33rd parallel. So these things are happening. I've seen tons of UFOs day, night. I've seen them come through dimensional portals. I've stood next to an extraterrestrial being, 6'3" being with black eyes. I've seen all of these things, so I do know that they are here, and I do know that they're visiting here. So some of them, yes, and others, I think they're piloted in the conventional sense.
Now, I've heard testimonials coming from people who've been abducted, and some of them have said that when they've gone on to their vessel, it was organic, and where there was no window, when they thought about a window in that particular area, a window would appear. What do you think that is? Like, I have a hard time even comprehending that.
When you look at the makeup of the universe and the makeup of psychology, the makeup of humans, the makeup of everything is a perception. Everything is the opinion of the observer, and that is the same with subatomic particles, with gigantic nebulas, with the human body. When we see things in the distance, the horizon doesn't actually exist. It's just a perception that it does. Now, when you look at the likes of thought is where we get the Egyptian god Teote, because thought is a higher level of awareness, a higher level of understanding. So when you go into these vessels and you think, then you are manifesting this as a perception. This vessel, this organic vessel, because you are part of everything anyway, you are not separate from anything. So when you go on an organic vessel where they have generators of inertia just to keep everything as a balance, you are creating these things through instant manifestation, because we all have these powers, but they are slowed down in a third dimensional density, and we have lost the ability because we're quite reckless as a race. And I think when we start, if the human race in its current form was able to instantly manifest, I think we'd have greater problems than we already have now.
Now, I find this very fascinating, Mike, because there was a UFO sighting in Africa. I believe you might know about it, where it was seen by a bunch of school children, like 50 or 60 of them. And when researchers afterwards came and asked them to draw what they had seen, surprisingly, a lot of these kids, they were drawing, totally different things of what they were seeing. And, some of them looked alike and some others didn't. Some seen a triangle, some saw a circle, some saw a cigar shaped. What do you think that is? Do you think it's that the UFOs like consciously projecting images the way it wants to look, depending on the person that's viewing it, according to their vibrational frequency or distortion?
They have the ability to do these things. That they have the likes of metamaterial, which is the refraction of light, so they can remain invisible. They have the powers to be able to, yes, to appear as they wish. The being that I saw was and my wife saw it, and a friend of ours saw it as well. And this was in a crowded place. Now, this being, as they were 6'3", black eyes, the skin of his face looked like it had been stretched over the contours of his cheekbones. He was not human. He was not from here. And yet, it was only the three of us in a crowded room that could see him as he appeared. So they do seem to have the ability to do this. But again, when you look at electricity, when it hits atom, it creates a subjective consciousness. That subjective consciousness is an opinion based on perception. So not everybody sees the same thing, but people see what they project to see. So these craft are so advanced that they are able to transform and give an appearance that they wish to be seen by. But again, bringing it down a lot of scales, when you look at the likes of spirits in the spirit world, they can also do the same.
Now, would you need to be, I would imagine that if you have technology like that or awareness like that, you would belong to, like a class 1 civilization or a class 2 civilization that go around terraforming galaxies or solar systems in themselves. Do you think that they are the type of people that may be behind these UFOs and they're coming around to check us out?
Well, there's different kind of beings. There are what we consider to be aliens, to be ETs that actually transit to different star systems in vehicles, and those vehicles are often discs or cigars, because when you look at electromagnetic space propulsion, which is really riding on the crest of waves, electrical waves, it is really the cigar shape and the disc that is best suited for that kind of travel. So they have different forms of travel. When you start looking at intergalactic beings, they don't need physical craft to get around. So there's different levels of these beings. When everyone has really been created with the ability to create, human beings create, we have children, human scientists are now creating. A lot of the things that they're doing is not in the mainstream, is not in the public awareness, but what they're doing behind the scenes is really, cloning. They're doing all these, even Japanese scientists are now putting messages inside human DNA, which is going from generation to generation to generation. So human scientists are doing this, and we all have the ability to create within that creation. If you were to ask me who is God, then I would say forget religions, forget religious gods, because they are really metaphors as a pathway to the true creator. When you look at how the universe is created, it is mathematical. Everything conforms and everything relates to a mathematical sequence. So therefore, the creator must be a mathematical supreme mind. And when I've looked at the Great Pyramid, because Egypt is really the epicenter for a lot of what I do. And when I've looked at the Great Pyramid, I've actually found codes in there that indicate that my last statement, that the Great Pyramid was put there by this creative mathematical force.
All right. Great place to leave it. Wow, what a fascinating mind that you have, Michael. You know, you leave me, wordless, almost each and every time. Like I've said, I have to go back and rewatch your videos to fully understand and grasp what you're saying. But, we don't have time. We've run out of time between you and I. And, before we wrap up here real quickly, give us a little lowdown on what's coming up for you and how people can reach you.
What's coming up for me at the moment, and again, I do apologise for the camera not working. I hope it hasn't taken away any enjoyment. It was working, ironically, before this interview. But what's coming up for me, I'm writing 2 books simultaneously. One of them is called The Sirius Point, A Stargate to the Gods, and that goes deeply into the portals that the Egyptians were creating, portals that were being aligned to certain monuments, especially Egypt. And I'm also writing a book simultaneously called The Secret Christ, and that goes a lot into connecting each and every major religion into one solitary message. So those 2 things. I'm also writing, as you said at the beginning, a series of children's books, taking this advanced ancient knowledge and bringing it to the minds of children, because I believe that we need to address some kind of balance, because they are being given too much false history. So these are the kind of things that are going on for me, and of course we've got your event in just over a week's time. So these are the most imminent things for me.